Good afternoon and welcome to IBA News this Tuesday, the 27th of September. I'm Elon Aslan-Levy, joining you live from Jerusalem. We open with the sad news that the condition of former President Shimon Peres has deteriorated dramatically today, with doctors now describing his condition as critical and his neurological condition irreversible. Israel's 9th president was hospitalized 2 weeks ago in the Sheba Tel HaShomer Medical Center after suffering a stroke. The first presidential debate of the election season was held last night in New York with a worldwide audience of over 100 million viewers and 5 million tweets. The debate was seen as a good night for Democratic nominee Hillary Clinton, who managed to keep her cool as her Republican rival increasingly lost his. In a CNN poll, 62% of respondents declared Secretary Clinton the winner. The presidential candidates locked horns on the American economy, terrorism and race matters. Clinton accused Trump of having something to hide over his refusal to publish his tax returns, while Trump retorted that he was smart not to release the details, saying he would be willing to release the information if Clinton publishes the 33,000 emails deleted from her private server. Clinton cast aspersions on Trump's business acumen, asking why a number of his companies had gone bankrupt, condemned his stated support for Vladimir Putin, and criticized his earlier statement that climate change is a Chinese hoax. Trump, for his part, accused Clinton of not having the stamina or temperament for the presidency and said she has neither the vision nor capability to ensure America's security.
But when I look at what you have proposed, you have what is called now the Trump loophole, because it would so advantage you and the business you do. You've proposed an approach that has a $4 billion tax benefit for your family. And when you look at what you are proposing, it is, as I said, trumped up trickle down. Trickle down did not work. It got us into the mess we were in 2008 and 9. Slashing taxes on the wealthy hasn't worked, and a lot of really smart, wealthy people know that.
I will release my tax returns against my lawyer's wishes when she releases her 33,000 emails that have been deleted. As soon as she releases them, I will release my tax returns, and that's against my lawyers. They say don't do it. I will tell you this. No, in fact, watching shows, reading the papers, almost every lawyer says you don't release your returns until the audit's complete. When the audit's complete, I'll do it. But I would go against them if she releases her email.
So it's negotiable?
It's not negotiable. No, let her release the email. Why did she delete 33,000?
Well, I'll let her ask.
We are seeing cyber attacks coming from states, organs of states. The most recent and troubling of these has been Russia. There's no doubt now that Russia has used cyber attacks against all kinds of organizations in our country, and I am deeply concerned about this. I know Donald's very praiseworthy of Vladimir Putin, but Putin is playing a really tough, long game here. And one of the things he's done is to let loose cyber attackers to hack into government files, to hack into personal files, hack into the Democratic National Committee. And we recently have learned that, that this is one of their preferred methods of trying to wreak havoc and collect information. We need to make it very clear, whether it's Russia, China, Iran, or anybody else, the United States has much greater capacity. And we are not going to sit idly by and permit state actors to go after our information, our private sector information or our public sector information.
Whether that was Russia, whether that was China, whether it was another country, we don't know. Because the truth is, under President Obama, we've lost control of things that we used to have control over. We came in with the Internet. We came up with the Internet. And I think Secretary Clinton and myself would agree very much. When you look at what ISIS is doing with the Internet, they're beating us at our own game, ISIS. So we have to get very, very tough on cyber and cyber warfare.
I support our democracy. And sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. But I certainly will support the outcome of this election. And I know Donald's trying very hard to plant doubts about it, but I hope the people out there understand this election's really up to you. It's not about us so much as it is about you and your families and the kind of country and future you want. So I sure hope you will get out and vote as though your future depended on it, because I think it does.
I want to make America great again. We are a nation that is seriously troubled. We're losing our jobs. People are pouring into our country. The other day, we were deporting 800 people, and perhaps they passed the wrong button, they pressed the wrong button, or perhaps, worse than that, it was corruption. But these people that we were going to deport for good reason ended up becoming citizens. And it was 800, and now it turns out it might be 1,800, and they don't even know.
Will you accept
Look,
the outcome
here's
of
the
the
story.
election?
I want to make America great again. I'm going to be able to do it. I don't believe Hillary will. The answer is, if she wins, I will absolutely support her.
Israel was alluded to only once during last night's debate, when Trump, criticizing the Iran nuclear deal, mentioned his recent meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu. Believe me, he said, he's not a happy camper. While speaking after the US presidential debate, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stressed that it does not matter who is elected as long as Washington's support for Israel continues. Speaking at the start of today's cabinet meeting, postponed owing to the Prime Minister's New York trip, Netanyahu said that he discussed Israel and the region at length with both frontrunners, and that both Clinton and Trump had pledged their support and friendship. He said the US-Israel alliance will remain strong and even strengthen in the coming years. Netanyahu added that in his meeting last week with President Obama, it was excellent, and thanked him for the $38 billion military aid package signed earlier. Netanyahu emphasized that although it is no secret that the two have had several disagreements, primarily over Iran, these did not harm the stable bilateral relationship. The Prime Minister also addressed Israel's improving relations with the rest of the world, repeating that it is only a matter of time before we are able to dissolve the automatic majority against Israel at the United Nations. Well, immediately after landing back home yesterday, the Prime Minister rushed to Kfar Maccabiyah for a Rosh Hashanah toast with members of his Likud party. The Prime Minister said the government will work towards removing all illegal immigrants from neighborhoods in southern Tel Aviv. Netanyahu said that Israel has already stopped the flow of illegal immigration into the country and deported 20,000 Eritrean and Sudanese migrants, and that the government will ensure the removal of those remaining. If elections were held today, Yesh Atid, led by former Finance Minister Yair Lapid, would emerge the largest party in the Knesset with 25 seats, followed by Likud with 21 seats. This, according to a new poll conducted by Channel 1, the third in a row to give Yesh Atid the lead. It also found that the Jewish Home would rise to 13 seats, and Yisrael Beitenu would also be buoyed with 9 seats. The joint list would tie for third place, retaining 13 seats, and the Zionist Union would collapse to 12. Kulanu would fall from 10 to 6, while Shas, Meretz, and the UTJ would each gain a seat. Despite the lead for Yesh Atid, only 17% of respondents named Chairman Yair Lapid as their preferred Prime Minister, with 24% naming the incumbent Prime Minister Netanyahu. Only 8% preferred opposition leader Isaac Herzog. The poll was conducted by TNS Kantar, polling 500 adults and specifying no margin of error. Reacting to the results of the poll, member of Knesset Oren Chazan attributed the Likud's loss of its plurality to infighting inside the party, but with no election in the foreseeable future, he told Aryeh O'Sullivan the Likud will bounce back.
I think the fact that people look at us and see that we fight a lot between ourselves, this is the reason why we go down. If we want to get the faith and the hug from the people, we need to show them that we don't fight between us, that we have all the opportunities to bring good message to Israel, and we do it. If the leadership will be brave enough to bring the right laws, to build the land of Israel, to stand in front of the world, to continue and keep our safety in the streets, we will go up not just on those questions on the street, in the Kalpi, in the election, but like I know it, the election is supposed to be on October 2019. As long as it depends on me and my friends, it will be on time, and give us the chance to continue with a good job, us and the Prime Minister of Netanyahu.
In his first interview since assuming his post, Attorney General Avichai Mandelblit clarified that his ties with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu are not as close as some believe and will not affect his legal examination of allegations against the Premier. Rejecting accusations of foot-dragging in the probes, Mandelblit said he will launch a criminal investigation if there is reasonable suspicion. His comments appear in an interview in the upcoming Rosh Hashanah issue of the Israel Bar Association's periodical, portions of which were published in the Hebrew daily Yediot Ahronot. Meanwhile, Channel 10 reported last night that the Prime Minister has petitioned a Jerusalem court to block a Freedom of Information request from an NGO seeking that details of Netanyahu's family laundry bills be made public. Education ministers from across the OECD are in Israel today for a two-day international conference hosted by the OECD and Education Minister Naftali Bennett. More in this report from yesterday's launch event in Jerusalem. The startup nation is rooted in a 2,000-year-old culture of debate, questioning authority, and breaking the rules. That was the message from Education Minister Naftali Bennett as he opened Israel's first ever conference for OECD education ministers in Jerusalem. Over 30 delegations were in attendance to draw lessons from the Israeli education system for their home states.
The entrepreneurial culture is absolutely amazing to see. I mean, there's so many really good examples. The level of social responsibility that is given to students, sort of to shape their own future, to think about what is their place in society. I think there's a lot of really very interesting initiatives here in schools and even around schools. Perhaps the most fascinating part about Israel is not the formal school system. Is education around the formal school system, all the kind of initiatives that actually happen that support learning throughout life.
Education Minister Bennett revealed what he called the secret of the startup nation.
2,000 years of education. You see, 2,000 years ago we had a state of Israel here. We were then dispersed by the Romans all around the world, but the Jewish leadership back then made a cardinal decision that every child will learn to read and write.
Bennett also attributed the Jews' scholarly prowess to the practice of chevruta, learning in pairs in which the teacher sets a challenge based on ancient texts and gives the pairs several hours to debate the solution.
So it's a very loud, very argumentative methodology of learning. And in fact, the debate is for the sake of the debate, not even for the sake of the bottom line. And that culture of debate and questioning is inculcated deeply in our culture.
Later, Bennett tweeted that the Korean Education Ministry is even preparing a pilot based on the chevruta technique. Bennett also attributed Israel's success to widespread volunteering, the early assumption of responsibility in the military and youth movements, and good old-fashioned chutzpah and sharp elbows.
If you cannot enter a room through the door, come through the window. If you can't get in through the window, drill a hole in the ceiling and come through. You get through. You make it happen.
Andreas Schleicher, director for the OECD's Directorate of Education and Skills, said that the rapid advance in technology requires teachers to revolutionize education to meet the shifting demands of developed economies.
The world no longer rewards people just for what they know. Google knows everything. The world rewards people for what they can do with what they know. That has become the big differentiator. And the dilemma for educators is that the kind of things that are easy to teach, maybe easy to test, are precisely the kind of things that are easy to digitize, automate, outsource.
But while Israel gets top marks for effort, there's still room for improvement.
If you go into most classrooms, in most schools, you find still quite traditional kind of teaching and learning, very much focused on the reproduction of subject matter content. So even Israel has still a long way to go to make innovation sort of mainstream.
On the sidelines of yesterday's OECD conference, I asked Education Minister Naftali Bennett how his vision that Israel should export spiritual knowledge to the world would find expression in Israel's relations with OECD education ministers.
All the leaders of the world are here in Jerusalem talking about innovation, talking about the spirit of the startup nation, and how can you get that sort of spirit dispersed all around the world.
And you see innovation as part of that spiritual knowledge we're exporting?
Oh, you bet. Innovation is at the core of what the free world is looking for today. And lots of people are asking the question, what is the secret of Israel? What's going on there that this little country with a small land but a big heart is creating thousands of startups a year What's the secret? And I think we're here to engage and understand that.
Yesterday, on your tour of Jerusalem with the education ministers, you said that the Jewish people have been defined for 2,000 years by a culture of scholarship and reading and learning. Do you think that's still the dominant culture of Israeli children today?
I think so, though I think we have to reinvigorate our own education system. There's no doubt that the celebrity culture is pretty strong here, and we definitely need to, put on the pedestal our intellectual heroes, our thought leaders, what the Jewish nation has always been about, which is scholarship and thought. But I'm optimistic. We're getting things done. More kids are joining math and science. More kids are going to learn English this year. We're on it, and the tide is turning. After 10 years of decline, we're seeing change.
Residents of the settlements of Ofra and Amona in Samaria held a demonstration outside the High Court of Justice today after the Supreme Court ruled 9 houses in Ofra were built on private Palestinian land and must therefore be demolished. Hundreds of residents demanded that the government legalize the status of all homes slated for demolition inside Ofra and indeed across Judea and Samaria in such settlements as Amona, which is pending evacuation after the High Court ruled that it was built on private Palestinian land. Netzach Brot, whose home faces demolition, told Aryeh O'Sullivan his house is like every other in Israel.
The demolition orders were provided on legal grounds, so of course there are legal arguments for that. But besides that fact, Ofra was established according to government decision. We didn't do anything new. I personally bought a house just like I would buy a house anywhere else in Israel with the legal documentation and so on. I don't see any difference between my house and any house in Israel. Of course, we don't want to be taken out of our homes, and we want to keep living wherever we should be living. I was born in Canada. I moved to Israel because I want to be in Israel, because I think it's the homeland for all of us. And being in Ofra is part of being in Israel.
Sergeant Elor Azaria, charged with manslaughter for shooting a neutralized terrorist in Hebron in March, opened fire because he felt he was in danger. That's according to Reserve Brigadier General Shmuel Zakkai, who testified today for the defense at the Jaffa Military Court. Zakkai said he reached this conclusion after watching footage of the incident, adding it was reasonable for Azaria to shoot as he believed the terrorist was carrying a bomb. Cross-examined by the prosecution, Zakkai reaffirmed his conviction that Azaria appeared to have shot for a reason. I've seen people in my life who shoot just to kill, he said. To my delight, none of them were IDF soldiers. He also criticized the behavior of Azaria's commanders and statements made by some army commanders against Azaria before the commencement of the trial. 5 Palestinians suspected of involvement in arms dealing were arrested, with weapons and ammunition seized in a series of overnight raids conducted by the army, police and Shin Bet in the West Bank. The searches for illicit weapons took place in Hebron and Yatir, where forces confiscated M16 rifle parts, semi-automatic weapons, handguns, knives, pipe bombs, and some 150,000 shekels in cash, believed to be payment for weapons deals. During the operation, troops also shut down a weapons manufacturing facility. The army is investigating the circumstances of a serious head injury incurred by a junior tank commander during a nighttime training exercise at the Shizafon military base in the south. The incident occurred yesterday and was released for publication by the army this morning. According to local reports, the soldier was hit in the head when the barrel of the tank cannon recoiled, possibly due to a malfunction. He managed to climb off the tank and notify his superiors before collapsing. An order was given to halt training exercising using the Merkava Siman 4 tanks until the completion of the investigation. For the first time in months, truckloads of humanitarian aid dispatched by the UN World Food Programme succeeded in reaching 4 towns in war-torn Syria. The convoy of 70 trucks carried food rations, medicines and other supplies to towns located in rural areas outside Damascus and Idlib. Officials said the supplies were sufficient to feed 60,000 people for a month. They also supplied special nutritional products to prevent malnutrition of 250 children living in Madaya and Zabadani.
Since 5 months we were not able to come to the 4 towns, and we are in Madaya now, and we finally got this convoy rolling into Madaya, and we are unloading, as you see now. People here complain that winter is coming, they don't have clothes, they don't have firewood, they don't have wood to cook. They're actually burning carpets, they're burning furniture just to cook and also to produce fuel.
Meanwhile, doctors warn that the health situation in Aleppo, which continues to be pounded day and night by Syrian and Russian planes since the breakdown of the ceasefire, is on the verge of collapse. The World Health Organization today called for the immediate evacuation of the sick and elderly from Aleppo. At a meeting at the UN headquarters in Geneva yesterday, medical officials talked of the dwindling medical supplies, noting fuel in Aleppo's 8 hospitals is running out. They added that owing to the systematic attacks on medical crews, only 30 doctors are left to treat 250,000 people trapped in the rebel-held eastern part of the city.
Most of cases are trauma cases. Many of them need fixation. External fixators are absent at all inside the city. This is the main orthopedic consumables needed, external fixators, and also the fuel is only enough to serve about 20 days, not more than, less than 1 month to operate these 8 hospitals inside eastern Aleppo.
We can state without a doubt that over 90% of the attacks Physicians for Human Rights has documented were carried out by Syrian government forces or their allied Russian forces. To be clear, opposition and Islamic State forces have also attacked medical facilities. Those attacks are equally abhorrent, but they in no way match the scope and scale of the Syrian government's all-out assault on its own people and their health infrastructure.
Israel and Jordan have signed a $10 billion deal to supply the Hashemite kingdom with natural gas for 15 years. The agreement will go into effect in 2019 when US-based Noble Energy and Israel's Delek Group plan to bring the Leviathan oil field online. Energy Minister Yuval Steinitz hailed the deal as an important national achievement. Yossi Abu, Chief Executive Officer of Delek Drilling, said the agreement establishes the Leviathan field as a serious player on the energy map and will enable Israel's eastern neighbor to benefit from clean, efficient and cheap energy. He added that the Leviathan Consortium plans to push for future agreements with Egypt, Turkey and the Palestinian Authority.
Israel will become an important player in the energy market, and this will enable us also to develop, to discover and to develop additional gas fields that are waiting to be explored in the Israeli economic waters.
In finance, the stock exchange and shekel are both down today. Apologies, the stock exchange is down and the shekel is up today. In weather, tomorrow will be partly cloudy and temperatures should remain stable, cool for the season. And that's all for today. We'll be back again tomorrow, same time, same place. I'm Elon Aslan Levy, and it's a good evening from Jerusalem.